Cold breath outside, warm fire inside, and the long note of a horsehead fiddle holding the room still. Smoke slips through the round roof into an endless blue. A blue ribbon ties a vow to the sky. Feed the traveler, keep your word, ride straight. Deer stones watch from the ridge. Hooves murmur like a distant drum. From hunger and dust, a road begins, gathering camps into a people, and a people into a story that still breathes tonight. Tonight, we journey into the story of the Mongols. You might struggle to endure what they once lived through. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You meet the land as breath before thought, a wide skin of grass under a roof of blue. At noon, the light is fierce and clean. At evening, it softens into a violet hush. The wind smells of sage, clay, and horse. You ride low, knees steady, and the ground slides away in long sentences. White felt homes scatter across the valley, each with a thin thread of smoke rising to the open sky. Inside a jur, the world turns round and warm. Felt muffles weather and voices. The lattice is patience made into wood. Through the smoke hole, you keep company with the eternal blue sky. A kettle murmurs, salt tea breathes, a bowl of airog cools your palm. A fiddle with a carved horse head waits on its peg. Two strings carry a long song that crosses distance and returns with a taste of ash and milk and road. The camp moves with the seasons and you move with it. Spring asks for low water meadows, summer for high wind, autumn for stubble near the valley, winter for folds in the hills. The camp lifts, the camp sets, the camp moves again. You roll felt against rain, stack poles on carts, tie the knots that hold a home. Horses blow steam into morning and graze as if time were grass, and dogs trace a circle that keeps watch. Practice shapes the body until the bow feels like a limb. Horn and sinew bend at your draw. You loose while the horse still runs, and the arrow goes straight with a tone like a plucked string. Small plates sewn into leather guard your chest without weight. A lariat and a knife ride at the saddle, tools for pasture and for trouble. Short stirrups lift your body so you turn your torso like water and keep balance at a gallop. You climb a ridge and stone pillars rise in a low field. They are deer stones, carved with running animals, belts, and blades. Sun warms them by day, frost skins them by night. Your palm finds the grooves and the years fall away. No single tale explains them. They might honor a loved rider. They might guard a gate for spirits. They might lift a path toward the sky for those who leave without a map. Farther on, a cairn stands under strips of blue and white silk that flicker like small streams in wind. You add a stone and circle the mound 3 times. You honor mountain and river and the great roof above both. A vow settles on your tongue, simple and strong. Smoke clings to your hair. The air holds fear and trust together and asks for steadiness. A falcon cuts the noon and vanishes. Hoofprints stitch dust into lines that lead in all directions. Twilight gathers, and a singer begins a melody that opens like a road. A drum answers at the edges, quiet and steady. The horsehead fiddle follows with a voice like wind on a rope. Children learn the line of elders inside those verses. They learn which wells keep water after a dry spring, and which slopes hold grass late. The year becomes a circle in the mind, and the mind keeps pace with the land and with the rules that keep tents in order. Night brings stories that do not boast. A herder speaks of wolves at the edge of the sheep. Another rider tells of strangers who brought salt and took pelts and left news of stone towns that shine at sunset. Elders listen without haste. They weigh a child found in a trapline and a marriage that might quiet an old dislike. The next camp is measured by slow breath. Law lives in memory and in the way eyes meet across firelight and hold steady. Before dawn, a murmur rises to the sky. Smoke climbs straight up. Frost rims a saddle with silver. Straps tighten. East begins to pale. Somewhere a rider goes alone to see what the horizon hides. Somewhere 2 camps plan to braid their people into one. The air holds its breath and the ground feels ready, as if hooves gather out of sight and a long story waits for a signal. One clear fact warms like a coal. People who live here learn early to shoot from a moving horse with a small composite bow, and short stirrups keep balance at a gallop. Skill turns pasture into protection and travel into power. One clear symbol moves like smoke, a ribbon of blue tied to poles and to memory, honoring the sky and all that walks beneath it. One open secret remains on the ridge at night, the deer stones, map and marker, and mystery at once. You lie down in the grass and let the wind pass over you, steady and gentle, and you feel how a people can grow from such a sound. Hunger teaches caution, distance trains patience, cold gives discipline a shape you can hold. In the wide quiet, you sense the curve of a future, clans that will gather in a great circle and lend their strength to a single name, new rules that will bind riders, roads that will carry news farther than rumor. For now, you stay with the present as it stands. The horse breathes beside you, and the earth smells clean. Stars lift over a horizon that does not hurry. The camp sleeps, yet the story does not sleep. It moves in the hooves of night watch horses and in the soft pad of dogs that draw a circle around the tents. You close your eyes and listen to a world that asks for quiet courage and offers a long road in return. You walk beside a river that carries snowmelt from dark ridges and threads it through pebbled shoals where willows lean and geese sleep. The water names the land in a soft voice. On its bank, a boy learns to read the color of clouds because storms write their plans upon them. He is Temujin, thin as a bow stave, quiet as a hunter. His hand trusts the neck of a pony that knows the ford, and his eyes follow hawks that circle. A time arrives when kin turn their faces away. Horses are taken. Tethers are cut. Hunger presses like a stone. Men with cold eyes drag Temujin to a camp where strangers mark victory by the weight of a wooden collar at his neck. The moon climbs and the collar grows heavier. A guard sleeps. A door lifts. Feet touch frost. Temujin slips through reed and shadow to the river, sinks the wood beneath a jam of spring trunks, and frees breath, then hand, then hope. He returns to the world with a lesson that tastes of iron. You keep watch. You move when the wind shifts. You remember the faces of those who stood aside. Winter brightens the stars, and his path bends toward a girl he once chose by the river. Berthe waits with a scarf the color of sky and the calm of deep water. A stallion knots near her door. A kettle refuses to betray a guest. Songs bless the joining. Salt and milk forgive what has passed and encourage what is to come. Dark riders break that peace. They come at speed over a plain scraped thin by wind. They seize Berthe and vanish toward Pine Hills. Hooves beat like drums in the chest. Temujin breathes once, then twice, then gathers allies in a patient circle. He rides to Toril, called Angkan by many, and to Jamuka, his sworn brother, whose oath was made when boys shared arrows and promised a road without envy. Together they braid 3 strengths and move toward the camp that holds her. Snow lifts in veils from the saddles. Old trails find their memory under the hooves. Smoke marks a village where guards grow careless in morning light. The attack is simple and complete. Tents fall, ropes cut, captives help to their feet. Bertie steps into calm and places her hand on the mane of her husband's horse. Breaths shorten and lengthen. The road turns home. A child will be born and named Joki. The land keeps its own opinion about the timing. Yet the house stands. Small victories teach the discipline of bigger ones. You see Temujin return goods to families who lost them and feed a widow before he rewards a cousin. A young rider rises for skill rather than for blood, and the camp murmurs at the new order. Men who never sat beside elders taste that air and decide to stay. A simple rule takes shape along a riverbank. Courage matters. Loyalty matters. Usefulness matters more than the threat of a name. In the long hunt that trains a people, you watch riders spread in a wide curve and close again with steady rhythm. They drive game toward a circle and release it when the circle holds firm. No voice rises above the others. Signals pass by pennant and by song. The hunt teaches patience and the mercy that follows victory. It also binds camps that once rode apart and teaches them to share a meal as if it were a field well watered. At night, the sworn brothers talk beside embers. Jamuka keeps an old grace, silky and strict, generous to friends of his choosing, and stern toward those who question lineage. Temujin wears the smoke of hardship like a cloak and places the brave poor in the first rank. Their laughter is real, and their songs meet in harmony. Yet something cools at the edges of that warmth and grows along seams of pride and habit. Rivers keep speaking, while men fall quiet. The Onan carries log rafts toward lowlands. Kerlin reeds whisper. In the bend where Temujin once set traps, he now listens for a different order. He calls men by tens and hundreds. He asks them to think of themselves as parts of a single body and gives each part a clear task. The old chief lets the young archer lead 10, and the young archer salutes the old chief without bitterness. Commands begin to sound like music rather than argument. One clear fact rests like a pebble warmed by noon. Temujin escapes from the Taichiud, who bind him with a wooden yoke, and he rides with Toril and Jamuka to free Berte from the Merkit. That memory becomes a standard for rescue, for alliance, and for the quiet strength that prefers careful work to loud rage. One symbol hangs above camp, the blue scarf that honors sky and vow and the calm that follows storm. One open question walks beside you, the true cause of the cooling between sworn brothers. Dawn arrives after a night of slow talking. Jamuka's camp has moved. The trail divides like water around a stone. You follow Temujin along the left branch where grass still holds dew. Riders fall in behind you, as if answering a bell that rings inside the chest. You look back and see not a tribe, but a gathering of families that chooses to travel together. There are blacksmiths and singers and a widow with a sharp eye who cures a sore with salt and leaf. High on a ridge, a wolf pauses and turns. Its breath rises in the cold and vanishes. Old tales say the people come from a blue wolf and a fallow doe. The truth of that line does not care to be measured. It walks at the pace of myth and feeds courage where food is thin. Temujin looks up and does not chase. He takes the moment into himself and rides toward a plain where tents will soon form a circle larger than any he has yet seen. By evening, a new fire burns. Children sleep with cheeks warm from milk and smoke. A drum keeps a heartbeat slow enough to invite rest and steady enough to promise morning. The river runs at the same pace it always keeps. The wind feathers the grass and leaves it be. You settle under a felt edge and match your breath to the horse that crops the nearby turf and lifts its head from time to listen. You wake to frost that melts as the first sun pours across a wide meadow. Carts arrive from every direction and settle into a ring that grows until it looks like a low white wall. Men and women step down in quiet order. Children carry poles and ropes. The smell of new felt follows. Smoke lifts from the first fires and hangs in the still air like a pale shawl. You stand at the edge of a great gathering. Elders choose a slope that tilts toward the east. Tents rise with practiced hands. A central place opens, a green bowl for voices. Long tufts of white horsehair hang from tall poles and move in small waves. 9 stand in a row. They honor peace and sky and promise a day of careful speech. Riders arrive in strings of 10, and a captain counts them without hurry. Lines of 100 fold behind him and become a square. You begin to read the shape that fills the field. 10 men make a small knot that lives and acts as one. 10 of those knots make a stronger braid. 10 braids make a body that can move in any weather. The words for these numbers start to feel alive. Arban, then Zun, then Mingan, then Tumen, each with a leader who answers for skill rather than blood. Inside the circle, meat steams on boards and tea shines like amber in bowls. A singer warms a tune under his breath and waits for the right moment. Women cut strips of boiled mutton and lay them on wooden plates with neat hands. Riders sit shoulder to shoulder and eat without noise. The day tastes of salt, smoke, and milk. When voices gather, the sound begins low, then steadies. A man with a carved staff speaks so that the day will not wander. He names old chiefs and brave riders and those who fed the hungry when storms emptied the pasture. A hush grows as Temujin steps into the open. He is not tall yet. He fills the distance with a calm that does not blink. Hands rise, oaths rise. The old words return like a river that knows the bends. You lift your voice with the others and taste dust and joy. Men who once followed different paths agree to press their feet into a single track. A felt carpet lies under Temujin's boots and a white robe catches the sun on his shoulders. A bowl of mare's milk circles and returns to him with a glow on its rim. He drinks, and the camp receives the act as a shared breath. The name becomes larger than the man. Genghis Khan. The sound rolls in the throat and pushes into the blue. Gifts arrive, heavy and plain. A saddle with silver nails. A bow with limbs of horn so clear you see light move through it. A seal for pressing an order into wax. Messengers slip away toward distant fires. A new order takes its first steps across the grass. You feel the army take shape as a family with many ribs. A guard forms near the center, men who sleep close to the leader. Captains receive not only horses and quivers, but tasks that reach beyond war. Some take charge of herds and wells, some track goods between camps, some keep lists of who rides in which knot of 10. A road for news begins to grow in the mind even before it grows on the earth. Then law speaks. Not from a tablet of stone, but from memory that sits inside the chest of those who listen closely. Theft breaks trust. A man who takes grain when storms have already thinned the store gives back more than he took. A woman who rides alone deserves the peace of the road. A stranger who seeks shelter at night finds it. A soldier obeys his 10 and his 100 and his 1,000 and does not boast. Horses rest at agreed times and are not beaten into bone. The code does not arrive as a book. It arrives as a line of fire that moves from mouth to ear and does not go out. People call it by a word that feels stern and steady, a rule that guards both war and pasture. Some parts sound exact, like how meat is shared after the hunt. Some parts feel like the bones of a larger body that no single person can hold in his hands. You write them with your breath as you repeat them, and they stay. The day deepens. Wrestlers stamp the earth with flat feet and not hands at the shoulder. An archer sends 3 arrows into a mark so far away it looks like a swallow. A child balances on a cantering pony and sings a verse that makes the women smile. The 9 white standards lift and settle. They remind you that peace remains the hope even when war rides near. Clouds climb, shadows lengthen, fires find new wood. One hard fact settles with the evening. In this year, the gathering crowns Temujin with a title that carries across languages and mountains. He receives the name as the field receives rain, not loud yet complete. One sign shines above the rest, the white standards with their long hair that breathe in small tides. One quiet uncertainty lingers beside the fire. The full shape of the law that grows today will never sit whole on a single page, and the first meaning of the name may be ocean-wide. Night draws a slow cloth over the camp. Stars open, and the hush between them feels wide. You lie near the outer ring, where horses crop in a semicircle and dogs sleep with their noses on their paws. You hear late talk from the leader's tent. They speak of a census of herds, of routes for scouts, of a winter place for families who do not ride. You listen until their words blend with crickets and become part of a single tone that carries you towards sleep. The earth cools. The banners barely move. Somewhere a rider sings one line from an old song and lets it hang. You taste tea that has gone sweet with heat and time. You close your eyes and feel the shape of the day settle in you. A people has chosen a center. A field has learned a new kind of silence. Tomorrow, riders will leave this place by many paths, yet every path will carry the same direction in its heart. Cold returns as a teacher. You ride under a sky that rings like iron, and feel the ground harden into a road that every hoof can trust. The grass thins into stubble. The air tastes of smoke and pine. Ahead, the frontier rises in ridges and walls. Watchtowers keep their own counsel on the heights. The wind brings a drumming from far stone, a slow heart that answers your own. Scouts bring news in short lines. Forests hold ambush and firewood in equal measure. Valleys carry sound in long threads. Rivers wait with a patient chill. You draw breath that fogs and vanishes. The horses enjoy winter, their lungs like the clean bite of the air. Ice firms the marsh and turns a path that would drown a summer rider into a safe causeway. The army moves as a single body taught by the hunt to close and open without haste. Before you stands a pass where a wall meets a dark gorge. The stones look older than memory. Their skin keeps the cold and gives nothing away. The riders who know these edges have eyes like hawks and habits like foxes. They prefer silence to talk. They lead you along goat paths that tilt above gullies. A standard of white hair breathes behind you. The sight steadies the body and asks for discipline. The first clash is not a shout. It is a low pull on a bow and an arrow that hums. Then the field wakes. Snow shivers under hooves. Jin riders push out from the gate with shields bright as fish scales. You feel how a feigned retreat can pull a line thin. The center yields just enough. The flanks bend like willow. When the gate guards grow bold and chase, the arc closes and the plain takes them. It is not loud. It is exact. The lesson rides ahead of you to the next gate. A city appears where plains fold into hills. Its roofs wear frost like silk. Its walls hold a dark sheen where fires once licked them and went out. The markets inside carry tea that smells of flowers, paper charms that flutter like small birds, bronze bells that remember summer. You wait outside and listen to the language of siege. Engineers who once worked for other masters arrive under truce and show how to throw stone with quiet strength. Logs become frames, ropes become tendons. Great arms rise from the snow like slow animals that learn to breathe. You hear that the city is called Zhongdu. The word feels heavy and central. Traders long ago brought you stories of this place where road meets road and granaries rise near lakes and canals. Now you see smoke lie across it like a thin blanket. The army builds ovens so stones can be heated. They come from the engines red with anger and break gate wood that has grown brittle with cold. Shield men move like a tide. Archers call to one another and trade targets with calm voices. Winter helps where summer would hinder. Moats grow polite and let you cross. Rivers accept iron shoes and carry weight like a friend. Sleds run where wheels would stick. The long breath of the season favors patience. You feel it in the rhythm of the watch. You taste it in the soup that warms hands before dawn. Fires burn low to save fuel and still give comfort. Songs travel softly along the line to ease the hours and keep courage in its seat. Envoys ride between camps and walls. Sometimes they return with words that smell of ink and promise. Sometimes they return with silence in their eyes. A gate opens one dusk. The reason never settles in a single story. Hunger has its own persuasion. Fear carries its own argument. A hand that takes silver leaves no record on the palm. You enter a postern that smells of smoke and lamp oil and feel the city breathe near your cheek like a wary horse. Streets press in. Drums on towers speak in firm beats that guide defenders to corners where ladders rise. You round a bend and see a courtyard lit by braziers that spit and sigh. A shrine holds a figure with many sleeves. Incense ropes the air with a scent that reminds you of cedar and rain. A woman lifts a bowl to the altar for a husband who stands on the wall. You pass without a word. War does not stop the quiet work of hope. Morning comes pale and cold. A last gate breaks under a storm of stones. Smoke climbs and clings to the eaves, then spreads until the sky turns gray. The army enters not as a rush, but as a current that fills every street. Commands sound sparse and clear. Patrols push to the granaries first. The leader knows that hunger breeds trouble faster than anger. The city learns the taste of new order in a single long day. One fact sits plain among the ashes and snow. In this season, and in this campaign, the army of Genghis Khan breaks the power of the Jin in the north and takes Zhongdu, the city that later shines as Beijing. The act sends a circle of change through every province that looked to that capital for weight and shelter. A symbol remains in your mind after the noise settles. The white hair standards breathing at the edge of snow become a kind of winter moon that watches the field, a calm reminder that order must travel with force. One question refuses to lie down. The count of lives within the walls and the full shape of the surrender never keep the same number across the old books, and the city holds its secret like frost that will not melt in shade. When the fires cool, you ride back out under the walls. The plain looks wider than before. The wall itself feels less like a line that cannot be crossed and more like a memory that can be read. Hawks tilt in pale light. Wolves travel at a distance and keep to their own business. The horse breathes easy again. Its hooves find the rhythm that carries a rider all day and lets him sleep at night. Camps move to winter folds where water still runs under thin ice. Herds that grazed far return with ribs that do not show. Children carry small armfuls of brush. Women mend harness where leather cracked. Men sleep in shifts and keep cook fires low. Messengers pass with seals pressed in wax. Roads begin to form where long lines have walked the same course. A sense grows that the world is opening like a gate that swings on oiled hinges. Stories drift along the smoke like small leaves. The wall was not a single obstacle, but a set of choices, passes, locks, and keys. Forests taught scouts to listen with their skin. Cities taught the army to speak a new craft. Siege made new music in the hands of men who once shaped bridges and mills. The riders have learned to carry both bow and engineer, both camp and city, both patience and speed. Night settles clean and deep. You share tea that remembers ash and salt, and a sweetness that lingers at the back of the tongue. The stars seem closer, as if the cold took away a thin curtain. The horses stand with one hind hoof cocked and rest without worry. You lie down and feel the ground hold you. The quiet has weight. Victory does not sing loudly. It breathes slowly like a sleeper who has earned rest. You ride west where the land loosens into waves of sand and scrub. The wind speaks in dry syllables. The sun sits white and patient. Hoofprints vanish within an hour, and only stars remember the path. Guides read the sky like a ledger. Wells appear as rumors that turn true at the last moment. Ropes creak. Water glows in deep leather bags. Salt tightens on the lips, and the world simplifies into light, heat, and the steady breath of horses. A memory travels with you like a hidden ember. A caravan once entered a river town called Otrar and did not return. Chests of silk and fine felt were opened by strange hands. Merchants went missing. Messengers sent for redress came back changed or did not come back at all. The story grows teeth in the telling, yet every version points down the same road. Riders gather. Lists are made without speaking them aloud. The desert becomes a bridge that carries anger without smoke. You cross the Kizilkum with discipline sharper than thirst. Men tie felt around their stirrups so the iron does not burn the skin of the horses. Arrows sleep in quivers wrapped with cloth. Scouts ride at night when the sand cools. The column bends toward an oasis where reeds click in the wind like small bones. There you see frogs, dragonflies, and a lone fig whose roots taste secrets below. You share a cup that tastes of rust and blessing, then move again. Otrar rises from the plain with stubborn shoulders. You circle at a distance and watch the light on its walls shift from copper to iron and back. Engines grow from timber. A slow ring tightens. Gates test their hinges. From time to time, a shout breaks into pieces on stone and falls away. The weeks teach patience that does not fray. A breach opens small as a fist and grows until a man can slide through sideways. The town that broke trust learns the weight of new order. The leader there meets an end that leaves no echo but dust. Beyond Otrar, the road carries you to Bukhara. You approach from a quarter where watchers do not expect guests. The city lies like a blue dish set among canals and gardens. Domes shine in cool morning light. In the heart of it, the Friday place of prayer holds pillars thick as tree trunks. Hooves ring on stone inside that vast hush. You stand and breathe the scent of lamp oil and worn carpet and feel the moment tilt. A horse crops straw where a reader once stood. The symbol holds without words. Power has moved. You hear murmurs rise like steam and fade. Gates open under calm signals. Grain stores are marked and counted. Guards accept new orders and learn new whistles. The town finds a rhythm that holds. A felt banner lifts and settles in the courtyard, and the wind plays with its fringe as if it were any other cloth. You step back into sunlight, and the tiles of a small pool look like pieces of sky fallen to earth. Samarkand waits farther along the road, bright and careful. Walls send back the glare of noon. The plain around it fills with tents like a pale sea. The army does not run at the wall. It breathes, then moves. Squads ride forward and turn as if full of fear. They pull defenders out and then fold around them with the quiet speed of a hawk. The trick is old as the hunt and fresh as this hour. Ladders lean. Stones arc from engines that groan like great animals waking. Dust floats and settles on faces until every man looks like a statue from a forgotten shrine. The city bends before breaking. Gates swing. Keys change hands. Markets reopen in a smaller voice. Metal workers return to their fires. Scribes smooth paper with thin shells and sharpen their reed pens. You pass a stall where a child stares at the new riders with an expression that holds both worry and wonder. The river nearby runs cold and green. Laundry lifts on lines like pages fluttering with new rules. North and west and south, the news runs farther than hooves. The ruler who set his weight in Urgench flees across the Oxus, where water moves with slow strength. The army follows the edges of his shadow. Scouts report on reed beds that hide boats. Men stitch skins into floats tight as drums and drift across at night while stars wheel overhead. Others braid rafts from brush and peel. A wind comes down the river at dawn and brings the smell of ice. Urgench itself fights with the desperation of a last door. Streets twist into traps. Water runs in channels that favor the defender. The army answers not with one blow, but with many hands. Houses become islands that are taken and tied together. The work is heavy and close. It ends under a noon that feels older than the world. The silence after is thick and uneven. The river keeps flowing as if none of this mattered, and in the end, the river is right. A rider named Subutai moves like a line that does not break. Another named Jebe rides with him and reads ground as if it were a letter from a friend. Their patrols run far east and far west. They cross rivers where no bridge stands and find fords by watching how foam drifts along the banks. They leave false trails and fires. They teach fear to search in the wrong places. You hear their names in evening talk, and the talk settles men for sleep. The ruler's son, Jalal al-Din, gathers what remains and draws you toward the edge of India where a great river rules the land. The fight on that bank is fierce and swift. Horses sink to the girth in wet sand. Arrows rattle on shields and sing past ears. The river throws back light like a field of knives. The young prince breaks free with a small knot of riders and reaches the height above the water. He chooses water over surrender, and the horse follows him into the blue. He climbs the far bank with breath like smoke and vanishes into hills that do not tell their secrets. One clear fact stands like a marker stone. The Otrar outrage calls the campaign into being. And within a handful of seasons, the towns of Khwarazm fall in a chain that includes Bukhara, Samarkand, and Urjank, while the ruler dies far from his throne after a long flight. One sign stays with you long after campfires burn low, the sight of a horse standing inside the great house of prayer at Bukhara, an image that says the world has turned. One quiet uncertainty continues to walk beside the road, the exact path across the desert and the full words spoken in that mosque, since old pages never keep the same lines for that hour. You ride on among tamarisk and willow. A hoopoe calls from a mud wall. A man mends a net near a canal and pretends not to watch the riders pass. Women lift jars that shine with water and place them on hips strong from carrying. A flute answers a drum from far away. The air cools as evening shapes itself. You taste smoke, cumin, and the sweetness of dates. Camels groan with a sound like distant thunder and kneel for loads that smell of wool and dye. The army breathes in and breathes out. Messengers reach for fresh mounts at relay tents marked with small flags. Seals pressed into clay travel in neat leather cases. A list of captives grows shorter as families recognize faces and claim them. A list of craftsmen grows longer as men with steady hands join new workshops under new patrons. Roads that once carried silk and tales now carry orders and maps. The desert that almost swallowed you now feels like a floor for a wider room. Night grows. Stars begin to rise from the edges of the earth. You lie with your saddle under your head and let the river talk. It speaks of mountains melting and plains drinking. It speaks of reed beds that hide boats and of bridges that may or may not hold. It speaks of crossings that test courage and turn panic into triumph. You close your eyes and keep the sound, a promise that the road continues and that the horse will stand when you rise. You ride under a sky that brightens early and cools fast, and the grass carries a silver film of dew that breaks under hooves. Camps that once faced deserts now face birch and fir. Rivers run in deeper channels. On the horizon, smoke rises in straight lines from winter towns. A new center steadies the reins. Ogedei sits in Karakoram with the seal and the white standards, and his word runs along the yam so swiftly that relay horses still steam when the next messenger grips the leather case. Orders point toward the west. You ride with princes who share blood and with a general whose patience cuts like a clean blade. Batu guides the host that bears the family name. Subutai reads ground with the calm of a surveyor and marks distance by the way earth sheds water after snow. The army learns forests without losing the steppe rhythm. Scouts taste bark to find which trees drink near springs. Smiths hammer iron shoes that grip ice. Furs line helmets. Quivers rest against saddles like sleeping wings. The Volga shows itself under pale light like a strip of beaten tin. Rafts grind at shore ice and chains rattle across ferries. North winds talk through pine and through the quilt of a winter camp. Tents sit low and tight. A pot stews millet and meat while a boy flicks ice from a picket rope. The first gates to fall belong to towns that once taxed the conversation between sunrise and sunset. Wooden walls crack with a sound like dry riverbed. Inside, order steps forward with calm boots. Snow carries you farther. Ryazan burns quickly and the smell of pitch hangs over the plain. Kolomna and Vladimir learn the same lesson in the same winter, and domes that once flashed like fish scales grow dull under soot. You pass a church where paint peels from a saint's eye and flakes drift like moths. A woman wraps bread in a scarf and presses it into a rider's hands while a child steps from a doorway. The host moves on without ripples. The rule against murder without cause holds its line like a post in frost. Spring lifts the thaw, and roads that were flint in January turn to mud in April. Even so, the columns do not break. You take higher ground and skirt marshes that smell of peat. Kiev rises ahead with walls that remember many storms. Its river runs green and full and shows teeth at bends. Engines arrive on groaning carts. Stones arc with a low growl. Walls give up their edge and then their shape. The city opens. You step across a threshold that has known many feet and hear only the slow breath of new order. South and west open new doors. Detachments ride along oak roads in Poland. A prince named Henry draws his line near Legnica. The air smells of clover and coal smoke. The field fills with banners that ripple like small rivers. Horns speak. The clash is fierce and short. When dust drifts down, the path west stands clear. You do not linger. Subutai thinks in measures broader than any single victory, and the host seeks the next crossing as if pulled by a steady tide. Across the Carpathians, the wind changes tone. Valleys narrow and then open like hands that choose to relax. Hungary spreads out in good pasture and river light. King Bela gathers a large host on the Sajo. You reach the river at night and hear frogs in the far clink of armor. The bridge is held with care, yet care can miss what is quiet. Carts make shields. Arrows thicken the dark. At first gray, the lines meet. A hidden ford reveals itself in morning light. Camps fold. The field at Mohi empties under a sky that refuses to blink. Pest smokes. The Danube bends like a steel ribbon and holds you on the east bank until the river sleeps in deep winter. Ice thickens, and the army moves like a shadow across a mirror. Horses trust the new floor. Carts creak in long files and leave no ruts. Villages smell of hay and sour beer and ash. Abbey bells toll in slow strokes. You sleep in a barn where straw whispers, and dawn paints your saddle with white lace. The law of tens and hundreds and thousands keeps its cadence across every mile. Then a rider comes with a horse wet in the cold. He carries a strip of blue cloth and a seal pressed hard into wax. He kneels longer than a messenger needs to kneel. Every tent receives the same breath. Great Khan Ogedei has gone to the ancestors. The summons calls princes to council. The sound of that call is far and also near. It travels through your ribs like a slow drum, and men sit straighter when they hear it. What follows is not panic. It is a turning. Columns that pushed west turn their faces toward the steppe. Camps fold in the order they opened. Forage is gathered and tallied. Bridges that could trap a column receive repair or a clean cut. The yam keeps its pace. Fresh mounts wait where a tamga mark on a post says they should wait. The seal still presses wax. Orders still arrive on time. Those who once thought victory always sings loudly begin to learn that sometimes victory is quiet and exact. One fact stands clear as ice. Under Ogedei, the Western campaign rises to a height that carries the host from the Volga through the Rus lands and into Poland and Hungary. With Kiev taken, Legnica decided, and the field on the Sayo near Mohi cleared. And then the march halts when news of the Great Khan's death requires a return for council. One sign stays with you in every forest and river valley, the 9 white standards breathing behind the line, asking men to walk straight. One question refuses to settle, whether the recall alone stopped the advance, or whether rivers, pasture, and aims already met whispered that the time to turn had come. Night returns to the steppe with the softness you know from first camps. The air tastes of sage again. The sky feels higher. A horsehead fiddle carries a long song that seems to remember the names of rivers you have just crossed. Children toss ankle bones on a felt rug and call the throws like small blessings. Elders sit with bowls of tea and speak low about news from Karakoram. The empire breathes in. It will breathe out again when the council settles. You lie on your back and watch stars arrange themselves over a horizon that never ends. The breath you draw now carries pine from the west and sweet smoke from the east. The world feels larger and also more joined. Roads spread in your mind like threads that meet in one knot. You close your eyes and keep a simple promise between your ribs. When the summons comes, you will ride in order, and you will make a camp that lets the youngest child sleep. You enter Karakoram at first light when frost still salts the timbers and smoke threads rise from low chimneys. The city feels like a camp that decided to hold still. Streets run straight as reins. Workshops breathe in steady puffs. A smith lifts tongs from a forge, and the glow paints his face like dawn on iron. Hammers keep a slow rhythm that fits the pace of carts that creak past with felt, hides, and billets of wood stacked tight as loaves. You walk along a row of stalls where salt cakes lie beside indigo cloth, where dried grapes share shade with pine resin. Men speak Turkic, Persian, Chinese, and the round vowels of the steppe. A scribe dips a reed and writes your name in the tall hand that came from the Uyghurs, clean strokes that look like small fences in snow. He presses a seal and wipes the bee-black wax with care. The mark carries weight that can cross a river without getting wet. At the center, a palace spreads low and wide. Its wood smells of sun. Its courtyards hold gravel that crunches like thin ice. A silver tree rises there, roots and trunk and branch all shaped by a master who understood how metal can pretend to be water and sap. At set hours, it pours mare's milk from one limb, wine from another, a sweet drink from a third, and clear water from the last. Pipes hidden under leaves know their task. A falcon sits at the top and seems to watch. Page boys catch the streams in bowls and smile without hurry. Envoys bring news to a hall where carpets breathe a scent of lanolin and rain. A monk in a brown robe tells of a shrine near a cold sea. A judge in plain coat lists weights and measures for a market 2 weeks south. A woman from a merchant guild sets down a ledger that tells the story of loans made to caravans that now return loaded with silk and pepper and fine thread. The room does not raise its voice. Questions land softly and receive soft answers. You follow a rider out beyond the walls to a post house where the yam keeps its promise. The signboard shows a mark cut like a bird's foot. Inside, saddles hang in order and grain sits dry in bins. Fresh horses turn their ears towards you. A messenger hands over his leather case and drinks a bowl of hot tea in 2 careful swallows. He takes a new mount and vanishes down a valley where dust hangs in a pale line that slowly fades. The road keeps a heartbeat you can hear even when it is quiet. A thin tablet lies on a table at the doorway. It is a paisa, bright as fish skin, where hands have polished it. It says that the bearer may pass, that posts must open, that kitchens must find pots and wood, that time matters more than comfort. The rule fits neatly inside the larger rule that lives in every camp and city now. Men speak of it as law, not a book in a chest, but a memory passed mouth to mouth, a net of promises that binds healers and herders and captains by the same rope. You listen for its shape and hear it in small corners. A thief pays before a neighbor goes hungry. A widow keeps a share when flocks change hands. A soldier obeys the knot of 10, the square of 100, the body of 1,000. Officers answer for men, and men answer for the horses they ride. Hunt lines close and then open when told. Fires are banked near leather. Meat is cut and shared with a care that could shame a counting house. The rule holds cities without strangling them and keeps riders free without letting them drift. Karakoram carries many prayers in one breath. You pass a shrine where a bell waits to be struck. Then a courtyard where a muezzin studies the noon light. Then a wooden hall where a cross is painted in blue and red that has faded like old cloth. Each door opens to a quiet voice that asks for mercy and patience. Priests receive grain from storehouses as a mark of respect and as a way to keep peace among neighbors. The city lies calm under this braid of promise. In the artisan quarter, a bow maker draws a line of glue along a horn plate and sets it to a curve of maple that smells like honey when warmed. A saddle maker plucks a thong to test its song. A potter lifts a jug from a kiln and taps it with his nail to hear if it rings true. A boy follows and learns by watching hands, not by listening to long speech. One cart leaves with arrow shafts stacked like reeds, and another with stovepipes that will tame smoke in a distant house. Messengers arrive from far rivers and leave again. Some carry tall maps on rolled silk that show hills like sleeping camels and roads like gray threads. Some carry a list of bridges that need repair before spring rains. Some bring word that a governor in a hill town has grown slow and that grain rots in a damp cellar while his ledgers shine. The council checks the seal and does not flinch. A new man will take that stool. The old one will answer under a roof that hears truth without anger and lies without fear. One clear fact holds the day steady. Under the Great Khans, the Yam postal road stretches across valleys and deserts with relays that feed riders and change mounts so that orders move faster than rumor. And Karakoram serves as a true capital where councils sit, where seals press wax, and where an artisan can turn metal into a tree that pours drink for guests. One sign shines even when you close your eyes, the silver tree in the palace yard, a bright memory of order flowing through hidden veins. One open thread remains. The whole text of the law that binds these lives never lies in a single scroll. And its first shape shifts from tale to tale, like a river that changes course yet remains the same river. Evening gathers and lights bloom along the lanes. A baker pulls flat rounds from a clay oven and the warm smell follows you. A groom rubs a mare's neck with a wool pad and the horse arches into the touch. Children skip a game with ankle bones that click on the packed earth. Far off, a rider blows a bone whistle to signal a shift, and another rider answers with a short call that means all is well. Night lays a cloak over the city that still feels like a moving camp. Stars stand where rafters end. The palace windows show a low orange glow. Somewhere in a hall that smells of cedar and tea, men and women trace tomorrow on a map. They speak of bridges and fodder and the snow line on a pass that opens in late spring. The silver tree holds a last glint from a brazier and then turns dark. You lie down near a wall warm from the day and feel the calm of a rule that does not shout and a road that does not sleep. You drift along a road that glitters with mica and salt while morning opens like a pale silk fan. Bells on camel necks keep a patient music. The line moves at the pace of breath, not at the pace of pride. Hooves press small moons into the dust, and the dust remembers them for one wind and no more. You carry pepper and wool and a chest of blue glass that throws sky on the sand. Beside you walks a scribe who guards a thin tablet on a cord, a passport that asks every gate to open and every fire to share heat. The first caravanserai appears like a fort made of sleep. Its walls give shade, its yard offers a clean well with a rope that does not fray. You lead animals in and feel the day cool. A clerk reads the seal and smiles with a kind of official kindness that still feels human. Stalls smell of barley, leather, and cinnamon. A pot of rice breathes steam. You hear 4 languages at once and feel no hurry to sort them. A trader lays out bolts of silk like small rivers. A healer stretches a map and points to places where fever recedes after the first rain. At noon, a monk in a gray habit holds a bone flute and plays a hymn learned near a cold sea. A man in felt and pearls listens with eyes half closed and replies with a 2-stringed tune that rides the air like a small bird. Their music meets in the archway and stays there a while, as if it has found a home. The shade grows deeper. A falcon on a wrist blinks slowly. An old woman sells dates soaked in honey and lime. A boy counts coins with a soft clack that sounds like rain on tile. You ride on with the passport hung at your chest where the sun can polish its edge. A post house stands at the next bend. Fresh horses stamp and turn their ears toward the road. The keeper checks your sign with a glance and sets out bowls of hot tea that taste faintly of smoke. A messenger takes your letter case, and another rider gives you news. Bandits have moved east, and a squad of 50 has moved after them. The keeper shrugs with the calm that comes from rules that work. Night falls in a walled town where the market sleeps under woven screens. Candles show the slant of roofs and the curve of a dome that holds the breath of evening prayers. You step into a caravan lodge where ledgers rest under stones to keep them from curling. A woman smooths a page with the flat of her palm. She marks a loan for merchants who travel in partnership. Their names sit together on the page as if they were one person. The guild that backs them trusts the Khan's sign and the reach of the Yam. The road itself is a kind of promise that pays interest. Stories walk the colonnade like men who have time. A sailor tells of a port where ships leave with paper in their holds that has more weight than silver. A doctor speaks of a powder that stills flame and frightens horses. A hunter describes a compass that holds north even when the sky refuses to clear. You watch the faces of those who listen and see a light move from one to the next. The road does not only carry goods, it carries agreement about what is true. You move again at first light. Sand gives way to gravel, gravel to clay, clay to stone set by careful hands. Milestones appear at measured intervals and keep company with thorn bushes that rustle in small winds. Guards ride a slow patrol and nod as you pass. A banner lifts near a toll gate and then settles without a word. The clerk there has orders to count without delay and to take little or nothing from those who carry the passport. Time is a coin that buys safety. The rule has learned to value it. Farther east, a river joins the road and you float on its light. Barges move like dark rooms with small windows. Teams drag them along towpaths that smell of grass and mud. Men on deck stack bales that bleed the scent of cloves, alum, and indigo. A pot of fish stew turns in slow circles. A girl ties prayer ribbons to a pole and watches them breathe. You read a notice written in a round, clear hand that says weights will be checked at the next town so that buyers and sellers can sleep without a knot in the stomach. In one city, a house with a quiet courtyard keeps maps in a chest. You sit at a long table and watch an envoy and a monk unfold silk charts that show the world as many rooms with doors that connect. Mountains look like sleeping dogs. Seas shine like hammered tin. A path runs from your thumb to the far edge of the cloth where the Western Ocean waits. You trace it and feel the road as a thread that binds not only markets, but kings and abbots, jurists and sailors, brewers and bridge engineers. Evening brings a supper with men who speak of paper notes that pass from hand to hand, of warehouse receipts that stand in for sacks of grain, of seals that carry the weight of a Khan's breath, even when his tent stands a month's ride away. You sense that the world has become a wheel with many spokes. The hub is not a single city. The hub is a set of rules that make travel feel ordinary and safe. Fires bank low in confidence. Gates close in a way that calms the heart rather than tightening it. One clear fact glows like a lamp. Under the rule of the great Khans, the long road between sunrise and sunset learns a peace that protects caravans, punishes robbery, feeds messengers at relays, and lets a passport open kitchens and courtyards from the Levant to the Yellow River. One bright sign rests in your palm. A paisa smooth from use, its letters cut deep enough to keep their shape through rain and heat, the visible promise that the road will keep faith. One question lingers with the taste of tea. How much of this great flow belongs to the hand of the state, and how much rises from guilds and families who learn to trust one another across deserts and passes, since the ledgers that could answer it sleep in rooms that no longer open? You leave the maps and the ledgers and return to the night air. A spice seller shakes a cloth, and a small storm of clove and pepper floats around your head. A mule stamps once and then settles. A guard walks the wall and hums a tune that came from a village he may never see again. The moon climbs and small coins in a dish shine like fish in a clear stream. Somewhere a pen keeps moving on paper with a slow scratch that sounds like a cricket. Before sleep, you sit on a low step and feel how the day has stretched you. Your eyes learned new alphabets and your hands learned new weights. Your ears learn to hear the price of wool in 2 currencies and the price of patience in any language. The road has entered you as surely as you have entered the road. It asks for humility and it returns favors in quiet ways. A tired camel folds its legs and rests its chin on a cushion of straw. The world narrows to the sound of breath and the faint rattle of harness. You lie down and keep one thought for morning. The road that brings silk and glass and pepper also brings stories and remedies and ways of measuring time. It brings a recipe for ink that will not fade and a method for setting a bridge stone so that floodwater cannot bully it from its bed. It brings the kindness that comes from trade done without fear. It brings a risk that no one can name completely, a current that runs beneath the market talk and waits for another season. You close your eyes and let the road continue in your dreams while the guards pace and the lamps sink to blue. You ride south and west where the Zagros lift in ribs of gray stone that drink snow and give back springs in secret folds. Frost whitens juniper at dawn. Mules lean into narrow paths with timbers for engines and coils of rope that smell of hemp and smoke. A falcon circles a cliff and vanishes into glare. The air tastes of iron and pine resin. Hooves strike sparks on slate, and the column moves with the patience of men who have learned mountain time. Fortresses rise like teeth from rock. Their stairways cling to ridges, and their cisterns keep secrets. You halt below a high wall where watchfires burn with thin blue flames. A gate opens under white cloth, not for battle but for treaty. A lord yields and is led away with a face that shows more years than his beard ever showed. Men talk in low voices about gardens where chosen youths learned faith with wine that tasted like a promise. Smoke takes the story and does not decide if it belongs to memory or to dream. You pass libraries where shelves lean like soldiers who slept on guard. A scholar gathers a bundle of red-stitched folios and presses them to his chest. He carries them down the mountain as if he carried fire in snow. You hear his name in whispers and keep it in your ribs. The road tilts toward the plains. The wind warms and the smell of date palms begins to rise at noon. The Tigris appears like a long blade laid flat in sunlight. Reeds glint at its edges. Buffaloes sink to their nostrils and blink with slow ease. Ahead, the walls of Baghdad lift from a low haze, pale where sun strikes them, and dark where towers throw shade. Minarets call, and the sound floats over water like a ribbon that will not break. You taste dust and the sour sweetness of river mud. You see barges tied 3 deep and hear saws cut timbers for rafts. Camps spread in a ring, trenches deepen, palisades grow and take shape with brisk thuds of mallet on stake. Engines stand in rows like grazing beasts, their arms creak and settle. Stones rise, hang, and fall with a heavy sigh. Firepots bloom and fade, archers work in pairs and trade targets without waste. Sappers go to ground and listen with their palms for the tremor that tells a tunnel is near. The city answers with drums on the walls and with flights of arrows that turn the light into a gray rain. Riders cross the river on rafts laced with leather and on bridges that float and tug at their ropes as the current pulls. Signals blink from both banks. A gate that stood firm for centuries groans, then tilts, then lies like a fallen tree across its own ditch. The current of men enters and spreads into alleys that smell of clay ovens and cardamom. The morning feels thin. By noon, it grows heavy. By evening, it has the weight of a century that chooses to turn a page. Flame runs in threads along eaves and gathers in knots that moan when roofs fail. The river drinks what the city cannot save. Ink bleeds from ruined shelves and turns eddies dark. A scribe stands with blackened hands and watches paper flare into orange and fall in slow ash. The great domes send smoke straight up. The palace courtyards hold voices that will never again be counted. The Abbasid line closes in a room where voices grow flat and then silent. Bells in distant quarters do not ring. The city learns how quiet can be loud. The armies step back from the first rush and turn to counting. Granaries are marked and guarded. Markets open under a watch that speaks little but sees much. Craftsmen are sorted by trade and given work. Gates receive new keys. The Tigris slides on with small waves that crumble against stairs that lead to water. A single palm burns by itself, and the sound it makes is like distant rain. Night brings a light of another kind. In a tent north of the ruins, a scholar draws circles on a board and speaks of stars as if they were very patient horses. The Khan listens and nods and asks for a place where such talk can live. Later, you will stand on a hill at Marageh and watch instruments shine under the moon. Spheres will turn, sights will align, and numbers will sit quietly in rows that hold their shape even when kings change. The same hand that pushed engines toward walls will fund an observatory where men learn how the sky keeps time. Spring opens Syria. Aleppo wakes to hooves in its streets and learns the weight of new order. Damascus greets the riders with gates that open slow and then wide. The straight street fills with dust. Water runs in channels between gardens that smell of orange blossom. The old citadel stands with a stubborn pride and then bows. The great road looks west toward the sea. The wind brings a taste of salt to a camp that has known only grass and river for years. A messenger arrives with breath that shows in the warm air. He kneels and presses a seal to the ground as if to cool it. A summons runs through the tents. The great Khan has died. Princes must answer the call. The host folds like a map. Men count bundles and lift them in practiced motions. Herds turn their heads toward the rising sun. The withdrawal is measured and exact. A general remains to keep the hinge swinging, a calm man with eyes that miss nothing and a grip that does not tire. The border that waits is a narrow valley with a spring that runs cold even at noon. Grass there has the bright green of new cloth. You move along low hills studded with oaks and granite. The air smells of resin and dust. The line that faces you is fresh and fierce. Its captains know this ground from childhood. Their horses are small and deep-chested. Their mail glints like scales in broken light. Horns speak. The field closes fast. A cloud of dust rises and becomes a ceiling. You feel the moment when a charge that always breaks a line simply does not break it. A flank that always bends simply does not bend. A ruse that always draws the enemy out draws them only a few paces and then stops. There is a pause in the heart of the day when you hear only wind and metal and the thin cry of men who will not retreat. The field loosens. The last banner falls. The general who held the hinge dies where he stands. Evening smells of crushed grass and warm iron. A path that seemed to lead to the sea now points back to the desert. One fact sits like a stone in the riverbed. In 1258, Baghdad falls to Hulagu Khan's army. The Abbasid Caliphate ends in that city, and 2 years later, the advance into Syria meets its first firm stop when Mamluk spears hold the line at Ain Jalut, and the westward tide recedes. One sign keeps returning in your mind. The Tigris dark with spilled ink and bright with reflected flame, a river that carries both loss and the chance for memory to begin again. One open question remains: the number of days of fire, the shape of the orders given in the palace, and the fate of the books gathered in the house of wisdom change from page to page, and the river keeps its answer under the silt. Night lies over camps on both sides of the border. A muezzin calls from a ruined quarter and the sound climbs without echo. A horse moves in sleep and snorts once. A reed bed whispers. You sit with a bowl of lentils and taste smoke, salt, and a sweetness that might be cumin or might be memory. The fire burns small to save wood. Stars scatter over the valley and take their places with a calm that helps the chest remember how to rise and fall. You look east and feel the pull of a council that sits beyond mountains. You look west and feel the weight of a door that has chosen to stay shut. The world is wide and joined by roads that are now part of your breath. You lie down and listen to water move over stones as if it told the old story once more in a softer voice. Sleep draws near like a careful friend. You follow the Volga as it slides like a wide ribbon through reed beds and willow. The water smells of silt and fish and a sweetness that comes from far meadows. Barges lean in the current with loads of fur and wax and salt. On a low rise, the new capital spreads its light. Sarai glows at dusk as if it were a long hearth set beside the river. Streets take shape from cart ruts that have decided to stay. Markets grow where shadows fall in a square. A mosque lifts a clean cupola. A wooden church stands near a yard full of sleds. A shrine from the open steppe shows blue ribbons that move when the wind remembers to visit. You enter to the sound of hooves on packed earth and the softer rustle of felt doors. Court tents stand beside brick halls. The smell of mare's milk meets the smell of spice. Traders from Rus set out wax and honey. Kipchak herders bring hides that shine like wet stone. A scribe holds a board on his knee and writes in a tall hand that learned its order from old Uyghur lines. Another scribe writes in a round script that carries the breath of Arabic. Coins pass that show the name of a Khan and the word that honors God. The clink of silver keeps time for men who learned patience on winter roads. You spend a morning in a courtyard where envoys wait for the signal to enter. A prince from the northern forests wipes his boots and bows with a steady spine. He carries a charter that smells of smoke and wax. The seal has pressed its promise deep. The paper says he may rule a city and collect a tribute that will travel south by river. The clerk weighs the words, nods, and draws a thin line in a ledger that will outlive the man who made the request. The boy who brings tea reads faces better than pages and knows which cup to offer first. Batu's name still warms conversations like coals that refuse to go dark. Men remember the winter when domes turned gray and the spring when a road to the west opened as if brushed clear by a giant's hand. Berkey's breath now shapes the room. He listens with care and gives with care. He favors the faith that bows 5 times and the merchants who ride with clean scales. A mufti steps from a door and carries a text wrapped in cloth that smells of cedar. The court listens when he speaks about justice and waits and the value of a promise made in the name of the One. You cross a square where a judge sits under an awning. A woman from a fur guild argues the price of transport during flood season. A monk from a wooden church asks about road safety for a caravan that will return with iron and salt fish. A Kipchak elder confirms a boundary by pointing with a stick to marks in dust, then to stones in a field, then to a reed bed that does not move when the wind moves. The judge nods, draws 3 lines on a tablet, and tells the scribe beside him to write them in a hand that will be clear to a man who has never seen this square. Beyond the city, a ring of posts holds the yam together. Each holds fresh grain and tack and horses that stand with calm ears. Messengers arrive like small storms and vanish as quickly. A leather case touches one table after another and then returns to the road. Inside are lists of households and herds for a census that will settle how much silver should arrive each season. Riders who once counted only foals now count doors and ovens and mills. The work is slow and exact. It turns wind into number and number into order. You ride north and find winter towns that bend to new time without losing old bones. A prince kneels in a smoky hall and thanks God that his rank still holds, then stands and thanks the Khan's envoy that his rank still holds. He steps outside and tells his steward which barns to open and which pens to seal for tribute. Church bells ring with a steady stroke. Their keepers receive a promise that their land will sleep under a gentler hand. Roads clear for tax caravans. Guard posts learn new whistles. The year gains a rhythm with more counting and fewer raids. Back at Sarai, the river becomes a street. A barge moors where cress grows thick. A dealer in steppe horses checks the bite of a bridle and pays with a roll of coin that shows new marks. A smith lifts a blade and tests its edge in soft pine. A singer tunes a 2-stringed fiddle whose head is carved like a bird that looks east. He sings in Kipchak, and a boy answers in Rus, and the chorus lands on a line from a prayer in Arabic that says mercy is a path, not a wall. The city learns to braid languages without breaking them. You visit a mint that smells of charcoal and vinegar. Men strike dies with clean blows and lift coins that show a year and a name. The metal rings in the air like small bells that agree with one another. A clerk sets finished pieces on a scale and smiles when the needle settles where it should. Traders line up with sacks and leave with tokens that pass without quarrel from the Volga to the Black Sea. A Genoese factor writes a number and winks at a local man who once rode with a bow and now rides with a ledger. You climb a low hill at evening and look down at Sarai. Lights prick the dusk like campfires in an orderly dream. The river slides by with the sound of silk pulled over wood. The steppe is not gone. It sleeps in the way tents still stand near brick. It breathes in the way princes wait on rugs before they stand on tiles. It sings in the horsehead fiddles that carry stories of hunts long finished and rivers crossed in moonlight. The city does not fight this memory. It carries it like a talisman and uses it like a rule. One fact stands plain as the river at noon. The realm that grows from Yoki's line builds Sarai beside the Volga, takes tribute from Rus lands through charters and envoys, and shapes the north with a system that sends silver and fur south while local princes keep their seats by permission. One sign shines in your hand, a charter smooth with wax and thumb oil, its seal pressed deep enough to outlast the man who holds it, a passport to rule that depends on a larger road. One open thought drifts with the evening light. The ground keeps a quiet secret about the first Sarai and the later Sarai that rose nearby, for the outlines blur where the river changed and where ruins sleep under fields that have been plowed many times. Night cools the tiles and softens the dust. A muezzin's call draws out a thin silver thread. A bell answers from a timber tower. The soft beat of a frame drum keeps time with the river. Guards pace and talk about fishing when the thaw comes. A baker banks his oven with chaff and wood and sets a last flat round to rise. You sit by the water and feel how power has learned to rest on trade as well as on speed. The breath of a horse warms your sleeve. The stars take their places above the river that binds forests to grassland and cities to camps. You lie down near the bank where reeds whisper and a small frog repeats his single idea. You taste the salt on your lip and the sweetness of cooled tea. The city breathes like a sleeper who knows he is safe. Tribute will move in the morning. Priests will open doors. Scribes will lift reeds. The Volga will keep gliding without hurry. You close your eyes and let the sound of water turn your thoughts to a gentle current. In that current, a capital floats that was once a camp and still remembers how to fold its tents when the wind gives the sign. You turn from the Volga winds and ride back across stony plains toward the wide beds of the Sir and the Ili. The air grows thin and clean. Mountains lean close, blue at noon and violet at evening. Between them stretch fans of gravel that pour into orchards, and the orchards pour into towns. You move through poplar shade where ditches carry snowmelt to barley and melon. Hooves click on baked earth. A river bends and shows willows with roots like long hands that grip the bank. A gate of mud brick opens to a market that smells of hot bread and dye. Round loaves the color of sun sit in rows. Bowls of mulberries stain fingers purple. A silk weaver pulls a shuttle through a narrow warp, and the pattern grows like a garden under glass. A scribe writes from right to left on smooth paper, and then turns to a tall page where the old Uyghur hand climbs like ladders. Scripts share a desk the way herds once shared pasture. You walk and feel how town and camp try to learn one another's steps. Farther east, a green valley holds Al-Malik, a place of forges and orchards. Its lanes shine with mica. Its streams run quick over stone. On a hill beyond the fields stands a felt pavilion that faces the city like a parent who watches a child. From that door, rulers look down on both shop and pasture and ask for balance. Riders bring tallies of foals and lambs. Clerks bring tallies of looms and mills. The two columns must learn to live on the same page or the page will tear. You ride to Kashgar where dust tastes faintly of apricot. The caravan yard sounds like a slow hive. Saddles creak. Bronze scales click. A money changer tips a tray and ribbons of silver slide into neat stacks. A small boy carries a ledger with both straight and round letters. He has learned to count wool and indigo and the jars of steel needles that came through high passes on the backs of mules with bells that never lose their patience. Above the yard, a tiled dome catches noon and turns it into a soft blue. On the road to Bukhara, you pass long strings of poplar planted like guard posts for wind. Water runs in channels cut with spades that know this soil by heart. Wheat ripens in a pale wave. A shrine stands at a crossroads with scraps of silk tied to a tree. A herdsman touches the ribbons with the same care he uses for a newborn foal. The old sky vow has not left these valleys. It has simply learned to share space with the call to prayer that floats from the city wall at dusk and returns from the orchards like an echo that no one owns. At summer's end, the court gathers under a roof of cedar along the edge of a city square. The Khan sits on a low platform and hears two worlds speak. Elders of the pasture ask for freedom to move when grass thins, and for mercy when a winter kill forces herdsmen to borrow grain. Guilds of the town ask for stable coin and fair scales, and a road safe enough that merchants can sleep. The Khan nods and divides tasks among captains who now keep bridges as carefully as they keep arrows. The yam sets new posts. Ferries receive new ropes. A list of fines for cheating on measures is announced in a calm voice that leaves no anger in the air. Rumor of change walks the colonnade like a man in soft shoes. A ruler chooses the prayer that faces west and bows on rugs that smell of jasmine and wool. He keeps a Friday service in a tent and later in a hall of brick. Judges learn to read both the law that rode out of the steppe and the law of the book that entered by the gate. For a time, the towns smile. Markets grow louder. Caravans leave for India with cotton and return with spices and bright stones. Those who love pasture grumble that the camp has been made to wait while merchants count. Seasons turn and with them fortune. A winter of thin grass bites deep. Wells freeze. The council of riders asks the ruler to remember hunger. Some say the throne begins to lean toward the city. Some say it stands level. You feel the ground tilt under hooves and then recover. A new hand lifts the white standard and the pendulum swings back. Pasture receives first gifts. Roads still open and close in order. The lesson repeats until it enters the joints. Balance is not a line, but a slow movement that never stops. To the north and east, a prince named Kaidu makes these valleys a strong place for his fight against the great capital beyond the desert. Battles flicker for years and pass like storms that leave the air washed and sharp. When his long season ends, a Khan named Dua steadies the realm and sends riders to mark and mend the road that leads to India and to the Oxus. The wheel turns and the spokes hold. Caravans move. The yam breathes. The land does not rush. It keeps learning the same careful step. You pass Samarkand and feel the city as a bowl that gathers light. Blue tiles lift like pieces of afternoon sky. Pages in a library smell of almond and dust. A teacher draws a sun on plaster and marks its shadow to teach time. In the square, a storyteller sings of an archer who can split a reed at 100 paces while standing in a stirrup that never wobbles. Men laugh and toss coins. A baker lifts bread from a clay oven with a pad of willow twigs, and the crust sings as it cools. In the oases of the east, another wind rises. Moguls of the forest and the 7 rivers choose a leader who loves the pasture and bows in the same direction as the city. His horse drinks at a reed bed and lifts its head with drops like pearls along its jaw. He rides west, and the towns listen. Some gates open. Some gates wait a day and then open. New governors step onto old carpets. Old scribes learn new seals. The rhythm of pasture and town learns a new bass line that runs under the melody but does not drown it. One hard fact sets its heel in the sand. The realm that grows from the share of Chagatai stretches from the Ely to the Oxus and learns again and again to hold both herd and market, with capitals at Al-Malik and in the green bowl of Transoxiana, and with a ruler who in one season prays in felt and in another season prays in brick, until the balance breaks and new hands lift the standards. One clear sign lives in your palm, a copper coin from Al-Malik that rings true on stone and carries a name on one side and a verse on the other. Small enough for a child to lose, and strong enough for a road to remember. One quiet uncertainty lingers on the map, the first bedrock of Al-Malik, and the exact line where pasture yielded to garden have slipped under flood and field, so that stones and books do not always speak the same truth. Evening finds you outside Bukhara, near a canal that hums like a hive. The smell of mint rises where water leaks into grass. A muezzin calls, and the sound folds into the lowing of cattle and the click of a loom that a woman keeps going until the last of the light. In the distance, a horsehead fiddle begins to sing, and the note bends as if it knows the curve of the river by heart. You close your eyes and hear both camp and city. You feel how a people tries to walk with 2 feet on 2 different paths without tearing itself. Night cools the tiles, and the canal turns black and glassy. Stars fall into it and float there like lamps. A guard passes with a staff and nods without stopping. A boy throws a rope over a peg and ties a mule in the dark with the skill of someone who could do the same with his eyes shut. You lie back and let dew settle on your sleeves. The sound of water threads the silence and holds it together. In that sound, the step breath and the market breath find a common pace and let you sleep. You ride into a plain where rivers slow and bend as if catching their breath before winter. Ahead, the new capital rises from earth and timber and brick, planned like a chessboard that found its calm. Walls run straight. Gates face the 4 quarters. Watchtowers stand with sober eyes. You enter by a road that carries carts of stone, loads of millet, coils of rope, columns of cedar. The air smells of wet clay, lime, and warm grain. The old step breath walks beside you and learns to keep time with city bells. A broad street leads toward halls that face south. Courtyards open one after another, each a square of light. Drums sleep in a tower at noon and promise to wake the hours. A bell waits across the city to count the night. The palace sits low and wide, its rafters painted with clouds and cranes. A jade seal rests on a table where scribes kneel with brushes held upright like small flags of order. The word for this realm travels outward from that room and does not stumble at the first bend in the road. Kublai sits with a stillness that reminds you of winter water. He speaks in a voice that does not rise. A clerk reads the tally of grain that has reached northern storehouses. Another clerk reads the number of barges that should arrive by canal before the first frost. Maps lie open like fields. A finger traces the old river that now carries boats north, helped by new cuts and locks that tame its moods. The Grand Canal learns a fresh purpose and begins to feed a city that sits far from rice, yet depends on it all the same. Between the markets, a new white crown lifts over tile roofs. A stupa shines like snow hardened into bell and spire. Craftsmen from valleys near the Himalaya climbed scaffolds here and taught lime to sleep hard and smooth. Pilgrims circle with soft steps. A monk places a butter lamp under the stone that remembers a teacher who crossed passes with prayer on his breath. Incense moves through the square like a thin river. The wind touches the white surface and leaves a quiet answer. You pass granaries that breathe cool air. Windows sit narrow and high. Doors are thick with iron studs. Clerks stamp tallies on thin slips and hang them in bundles that look like sheaves. A woman runs a finger down a list and shakes her head with care, then adds a cart that arrived late in the rain. The goal is plain. Rice must not spoil. Wheat must not mildew. Families in alleys of earth brick must find bowls full at price that does not bite. The city watches those doors with the same faith it once kept for wells on the open steppe. Along the canal, you hear rope grind on wood and the low song of crews that pull in rhythm. Barges arrive with sails striped by sun and wear lines of salt on their planks from old seas. Men stack sacks under sheds that smell of straw. A small shrine stands at the dock with ribbons that flicker like fish fins. A clerk sets a seal on a tablet that will ride upriver to the next storehouse. The line that links village mill to capital table holds steady for now, a live thread that hums when the city eats. Schools open their doors on lanes lined with elms. A teacher warms his hands on a cup and reads from a book that talks about ritual and rule. Young men copy lines until their wrists ache and their letters grow even. Examiners sit in a small hall and test memory and style for offices in town and province. The old craft of the brush returns in careful forms. Offices also rise through merit that is named by riders and captains. The two paths walk beside each other and sometimes trade places without anger. The city tries to make room for both. In a workshop near the Mintmen turn pulp to sheets that dry like winter leaves. On these sheets they print orders for grain and tax and pay. The notes travel with seals and read like promises. A trader accepts them in a market that sells pepper and half-moons of dried pear. A ferry master accepts them at a river and ties them in a roll that he keeps in his shirt. A baker accepts them and smiles when he can turn them into flour by noon. The experiment feels smooth under your hand 1 month, then rough the next, like silk that brushed against sand. A scribe shows you a new script that flows and climbs at the same time, made to carry the sounds of many tongues. Letters lean with a grace that seems born from brush and rain. Edicts travel in it, and translators breathe into it. In the street, you still hear Turkic and Chinese and the round vowels of the steppe. The new hand gathers them under one banner of ink, yet you feel how people reach for the letters they learned as children while they honor the letters the Khan favors. The page shows unity. The mouth keeps music. At dusk, the capital breathes with a wide chest. Markets loosen. Street cooks lift steaming baskets, and the smell of vinegar and ginger turns alley corners into small feasts. A troupe sets a simple stage with strings and drums. A singer in painted silk tells a story of loyalty that bends but does not break. Children lean forward. Elders nod slowly. The tale ends and the crowd stays quiet for a breath before it claps. The city likes a story that finds order without boasting. Courts sit with calm faces. A widow asks for her share when a house divides. A merchant protests a weight that was shaved by a sly thumb. A commander answers for a bridge that failed in spring flood. The judge listens without hurry and writes decisions in words that a porter can understand. The law that rode out of the grassland keeps its spine while learning new rooms and new chairs. The promise that a traveler can sleep without fear remains the thread through every judgment. An envoy returns from a southern port and lays out shells and spices, and a letter from sailors who learn to read the winds that carry them to islands where the sand is white as bone. He speaks of harbors where warehouses rise and where taxmen count without greed. He speaks of the North Channel that now brings rice to the capital with less loss. The Khan hears and nods. The capital grows full not only with orders, but with answers to those orders. A still center that sends calm into many roads. One clear fact anchors the day. Kublai proclaims a new dynasty and builds Dadu as a true capital that rests on granaries and the northern reach of canal and river, while councils in its halls send orders that reach coasts and high pastures. One sign endures in the eye, the white stupa that rises above tile and dust like a cup of snow. A calm witness to a city that tries to hold many prayers in one breath. One open thought remains in every ledger and on every wall, the full reach of printed notes across far markets, and the first life of the new script and the earliest lines of the palace ground keep changing shape when you follow them, as if the city prefers to hold some paths under later stone. Night gathers with a softness that suits a city of water and brick. The drum tower wakes and counts the hours. The bell answers and lets the sound fall like warm rain. Lamps glow under paper shades. A boatman ties his knot and lies down on a deck that smells of tar and rice. In a courtyard, a tree stirs and sets a small tide through its leaves. You walk back along a straight avenue and feel the step at your shoulder and the city at your other side. They do not quarrel. They breathe together. You lie near a granary wall that still gives off the day's heat and listen to water slip along a canal stone. The carts have stopped. The scribes have capped their ink. The palace windows hold a faint line of gold. The city sleeps with its ledgers neat and its gates shut like eyes that trust the night. Your breath slows to match the bell's memory of the last hour. You keep one thought for morning. The road has entered a house, and the house has learned to keep a door open to the plain. You feel salt on your lips before you see land. Swells lift the hull and set it down with a sigh. The fleet moves like a slow forest on water. Masts creak. Ropes sing when wind slides through them. Clouds pile in pale ridges over a dark rim that soon becomes Kyushu. Drums thud from ship to ship in patient relay. A conch shell answers with a tone that turns the air to glass. Oars dip together, and a line of prows aims for a bay that smells of kelp and rain. Hakata lies before you with walls of stacked stone that sit low and stubborn above the tide flats. Palisades show fresh timber. Watch fires burn along headlands that look like crouched bulls. Archers on the shore stand in sleeves stiff with lacquer. Their helmets shine like beetlebacks. A gong rings and carries across the water. You hear shouted names that belong to clans whose banners paint the wind with sun wheels and leaf blades. The first boats ground in shallows, and the first arrows hiss. Wet cord tightens, bowstrings hold, sails snap and then go slack as crews strike them to keep cloth from tearing. You climb a ramp with sand in your teeth and feel the weight of armor grow heavier when spray hits it. A short sword flashes inches from your cheek. A rider plants his heels and uses a long blade to test your balance. You answer with arrow and hook and a shove that turns him sideways. The field is a shoreline made of planks and foam and shouts. Night cools the heat. The tide rises with the moon. Ships edge away and anchor in clusters that look like dark villages under the stars. Lanterns sway and smear yellow paths on black water. Wind comes late as a rumor and becomes a wall. It presses masts until they bow. It lifts spray that tastes like iron. It pulls anchors loose from mud that had held them for years in other storms. Ships kiss and crush. Ribs crack. Men pray in languages that have never met and share the same breath. At dawn, the bay wears a collar of wreckage. Spars lean on reefs. A hull lies on its side like a sleeping animal that forgot how to wake. You hold a rope and feel the pull of a season that does not respect numbers. Years pass and the sea calls you back. The second armada grows until it feels like a coast of its own. New hulls rise from yards along many rivers. More crews learn the same orders. The shore shows the same stone line, higher now and more sure of itself. The first landings bite and then slip. The wind waits. When it moves, it does so as if it remembered a promise. Masts fold. Oars bend. The world turns white. Sailcloth tears into clouds inside clouds. Men shout names that vanish in rain. The wreck line grows until it looks like a broken necklace that runs the curve of the bay. South of those islands, a different water runs. It is warm and the color of old jade. Mangroves lift slow roots. Cicadas spin heat into sound. You ride along dikes where rice stands in green squares that mirror the sky. The air smells of mud and sugarcane and smoke from small cook fires. In Daiviet, the river writes the law. It moves with tides that hide teeth under a smile. Bamboo grows in thickets so dense that horses breathe hard to pass. The path narrows and then opens onto floodplain that looks soft and welcoming, and is neither. Riders from the capital wear silk that breathes and armor that lies close to the body. They move with a patience that belongs to people who learned war, where water keeps secrets. A general with a quiet face speaks to his captains with few words. He carries a paper that tells men why they fight and how they should hold themselves. The paper smells of ink and smoke and river light. Camps lift before dawn and vanish by noon. Fires leave little ash. Patties open and close like doors. The first clash is in heat so thick it feels like an extra skin. Your breath grows heavy. The ground gives slightly underfoot. Arrows rise and fall without whistling because of wet feathers. Boats lie low in creeks where the shade feels like mercy. A feigned retreat draws your line along a bank that shows slick mud and a fringe of reeds. You chase until horses flounder and then stop when horns sound 3 notes that mean turn back while you still can. The enemy does not press, which feels like a strange kindness until the tide changes. The last fight arrives on a river wide enough to look like a narrow sea. Stakes hide in the mud like teeth under a lip. At low water, they wait with points sheathed. At rising water, they vanish and leave a smooth surface that looks honest. Small boats tease your line and offer easy kills. You follow and find the water full of iron wood that grips hulls without mercy. Fire ships drift with innocent faces until they touch and then bloom. Smoke smells of resin and pitch. The current pulls you where it wants you to go. A shout rises from both banks and rolls down the channel like thunder. You fall back through reeds that hiss and through hamlets that move their kitchens into boats. Women tie bundles with quick hands. Children carry ducks under their arms that quack as if this were a market day. Fields burn where grain had almost turned gold. The retreat tastes of salted tea and ash. The season changes its mind and brings rain that turns tracks to mirror. You find the dry line that leads out and keep moving until the jungle becomes less personal and the wind does not carry names anymore. On other roads, the world learns a new fear that has no army. In a caravan yard, a rat slips along a beam and leaves nothing that a guard can see. In a relay post, a flea rides in a fold of a blanket. A cough starts in a town where snow lies late and travels as if it had its own seal. Inns grow quiet. Doors close before noon. A cart carries bodies through a lane where children once chased a hoop. Bells ring and then ring again. The big roads that once promised safety now carry a whisper that can empty a market in an hour. You hear of a siege by the sea where sickness climbs ladders faster than men. You hear of a ship that leaves with healthy crew and arrives with half that number. You hear of a city on a plain where weeds grow along streets that once filled with merchants by mid-morning. Monasteries copy prayers that ask for mercy and fresh air. Doctors boil vinegar and hold it to their sleeves. The same order that kept trade flowing has given the illness a paved path. A road can carry life in one season and a shadow in another. One clear fact rests like a stone that has been handled smooth. 2 armadas sail for Japan in the time of Kublai, and both break in storm, while in the southern rain, the campaigns against Dai Viet end at last with a fleet wrecked on stakes and fires on a river that locals know by heart. One sign stays in your eye, the braided straw rope and white paper streamers that hang at a shore shrine where people thank a wind that guarded their island, and a line of blackened stakes that show their points at low water, like a warning written by the river. One open thought moves with the evening breeze, whether the storms owed more to season and chance than to heaven, and whether sickness crossed the world by one port or by 1,000 small doors, since old pages never agree, and the wind keeps its own counsel. Night folds over sea and delta. Waves breathe on rock. Frogs write dots of sound on the flooded fields. A priest lifts a bell and lets it ring once, and the tone settles into the body like warm tea. You lie on a bamboo mat and feel the fan move air across your face. You think of ropes that held anchors and then slipped. You think of poles hidden in mud. You think of roads that carry both silk and fever. Your breath slows and begins to match the tide that swells and falls in the dark. You ride beneath a sky that remembers thunder yet gives only a cool wind. Camps look smaller. Banners show frayed edges where bright cloth once snapped like river light. Elders speak names by fire that younger mouths repeat with care. Horses graze longer and wander farther before they lift their heads. The steppe feels wide again, not as a road of conquest, but as a room where old families decide how near they wish to sit. From the western valleys, the Orats gather their fires into a larger warmth. Smoke rises in even threads above the Irtish and the Ili. You hear careful words in tents where chiefs weigh pride against pasture and lend their strength to a single hand. Asen holds the reins for a season, and the line of riders lengthens behind him until their hoofbeats sound like rain on a felt roof. South of the Gobi, a gate opens and a royal column rides into country that once called itself the center of the world. On a plain of dry grass, the Ming emperor loses his guard and his breath and becomes a guest who did not plan to travel. He drinks tea under a white roof and stares at a smoke hole that frames a square of blue. He later returns to his walls, yet the story does not return to its old shape. Stone answers to the north with new teeth. Beacon towers blink along ridges. Bricks grow from kilns that glow night and day. Barracks smell of oil and salt, fish and iron that has been cleaned too often. The border fills with markets where horses meet tea and copper scales lie between bargaining hands. Matchlocks cough and leave a bitter smoke that hangs in still air. Drums on towers carry warnings that once rode only in the chest, and patrols learn to count by the weight of powder, as well as by the number of hooves. On the western rim of the grassland, a different kind of ink dries. Zaya Pandita shapes a clear hand for Oirat words so that prayer and law can stop tripping on the same stones. Pages rustle in felt temples where lamps smell of butter and juniper. A monk writes a verse that tells the mind to walk slowly. A herder reads it aloud at dusk with a voice that comes from wind and milk and road. The letters look like fences that know when to open and when to hold. The 17th century opens, and the Dzungar realm rises from cold rivers and green meadows where snow sits late. Forts of packed earth and timber anchor orchards. Canals pinch the river into obedience for a few miles at a time. In the main camp, saddles hang in strict rows, and bells on the remount herd answer one another at evening. Galden rides east in measured arcs that test the resolve of the forests and the resolve of the men who rule from beyond them. Smoke from match and fuse mixes with the clean scent of spruce. Hooves throw up frost that looks like ground glass in morning light. An emperor from the city of willows rides north with a coat that steams when he dismounts, and a mind that prefers a map that does not lie. Scouts report where rivers wear thin bottoms and where reeds hide ice that never learned to speak. On a river near the old capital of the Kenti, the line turns and holds. Fire pipes crack. Banners of silk and felt tilt and recover. The field loosens at noon and tightens by evening. And the long wind that comes down the valley carries the last songs of a camp that has run out of bridges. The steppe hears the sound and keeps the echo for a long time. Far to the south, a golden roof catches sun on a hill above a dry river. Koshut riders have crossed from the western grass and offered their strength to a teacher in saffron who smiles as if smiling were a kind of armor. In Lhasa, the prayer wheel turns with a steady hand, and the city learns a new order that travels with horsemen. Bells ring under snow peaks soft as fleece. A standard that once ruled pasture now guards a sanctuary where words weigh more than iron, and a blessing can halt a quarrel before it learns to shout. Toward the lower Volga, another river calls. Torghut families point their carts west, follow reeds that whisper in winter, and watch geese climb inside gray dawn. They pitch felt near fish that taste of silt and cold sunlight. Their children learn the names of new stars that rise low over a flat horizon. In another season, a great return begins, a tide of hooves and wheels that seeks the old east again. Snow arrives early. Ice wastes no time. Some reach a river valley they remember from stories and place their hands on bark that smells like home. Others sleep where the wind keeps no records. The Dzungar meadows do not keep their rulers forever. A prince who once shook hands with his patrons chooses rebellion instead, and the ground under Ely turns hot. Columns come in from many sides, with grain counted to the last sack and powder counted to the last horn. Camps burn in light that hurts the eyes even at noon. The sick fall where they stand. Smallpox walks without needing a guide. By the time rivers drop to summer and stones bake, the green bowl lies quiet and thin on breath. New lines appear on maps and keep their color. Storehouses rise where yurts once opened to dawn, and the word for the region changes in documents that sleep behind lacquered doors. In hearth smoke and temple smoke, the old notes remain. A horsehead fiddle leans on a wall and remembers the song that carried a hunt across a valley as wide as any ocean. An old woman wears a blue ribbon at her wrist and touches it when she steps out in the morning to greet the sky. A child traces clear letters on a piece of birch and smiles when the curve sits clean and kind. Men ride out with rifles slung across backs where bows once rode, yet their hands still know how to speak to a nervous mare and to a neighbor who has lost a ewe to wolves. You pass walls that learned to hold muskets and now hold pots of geraniums. You pass a fort that keeps accounts for grain and for soap, where a sergeant and a scribe argue about prices and then share a pipe because winter is long and talk must end somewhere. You cross a river, tracked with ferries, where fishermen mend their nets and shrug when asked about kings and khans. Their nets measure a different order that cares more for level water than for banners. One firm fact keeps its shape under many skies. The Western Mongols who gather as oirats seize a Ming emperor on a northern plain in the middle of the 15th century. Then later raise the Dzungar power that holds the Ili and the Tarim until the long campaigns of the 18th century end that realm and fold the land into a new dominion. One sign endures in eye and hand, the Oirat clear script that Zaya Pandita shapes so that words can walk straight and prayers can remember themselves. Letters still cut into wooden boards and still painted on prayer banners that breathe in morning wind. One gentle uncertainty remains in the dust and in the ledgers, the true count of lives that faded in the Dzungar meadows and the full cause of the long Torgut return. Since songs keep mercy in their numbers and rivers carry away what they do not wish to say. Night cools the orchard edges and lays a shine on canal stones. A fox crosses a path like a brief thought and leaves the world to its own wider story. You let rain slacken and listen for distant bells from a monastery where the lamp will burn until dawn. Far away, a wall that once shook under hooves now hears only the small feet of swallows under its eaves. The air smells of wet clay and apple skin. You breathe in, you breathe out, and you feel how thunder can become a murmur and how a murmur can be enough. You cross a plain where the wind speaks in a voice you already know and the light feels like an old friend. Gurs stand in bright circles near rivers that turn silver at evening. Children race ponies bareback and laugh with a sound that carries. In July, the drums of Nadam begin to pulse across the valley, and you join a crowd where wrestlers stamp and lift, where archers draw and release, where small riders lean low and whisper to horses that run as if the earth were a drum. A city rises in the distance with a ring of mountains that hold it like careful hands. Smoke lifts from stoves that share the scent of mutton and tea. Buses hum. Monks in saffron move between red walls that smell of incense and snowmelt. A blue and gold symbol shines on a flag that breathes at a square, the flame and sun and moon of the Soyambo, a sign that remembers fire, earth, sky, and the balance that holds them. You listen to a long song that floats from a radio and feel the note bend until the horizon seems to bend with it. In winter, a dry cold clears the air until stars feel close. You step into a museum where saddles gleam and a fiddle with a horse head waits behind glass. A gallery shows a script that once climbed from right to left like grass in a steady wind. In a schoolroom, a teacher writes the same clear letters on a chalkboard, and a child copies them with a slow hand, then turns to another page and shapes Cyrillic that arrived in the last century and settled into street signs and books. Two hands learn to hold two alphabets, and neither feels like a stranger. You walk a road that turns dusty, then clean, then dusty again. Tractors pass with loads of hay that smell of sage. A truck carries copper from a mine far in the south where a desert hides green ore under red rock. The camp around the pit glows at night like a small city. Men sleep in bunks and dream of horses that are not here. Money travels along lines that look like roads on maps and then vanish when you stand where the line should be. The steppe accepts what it can and watches the rest pass like weather. A hill above the Orkhon shows a ruin where foundations remember a capital that fed riders and envoys. Stones keep their shape where walls once held rooms for councils and feasts. A new monastery lifts bright paint nearby, and bells count the hours with a tone like water poured from a ladle. You hold an old coin warm in your palm and feel how time can sit in one hand and in two places. The air moves through grass that looks soft until you lie down on it and feel how firm it is. Stories from elders settle around fire like feathers. A grandmother touches a blue scarf and tells her granddaughter that the sky still hears small voices. A herdsman explains how a well can be saved by a promise that the first bucket will go to the weakest flock. A singer sets his bow on two strings and sends a line across the evening that returns with the taste of milk and smoke. A boy points at a map and asks for the road to a sea he has not seen, and hears that a different kind of road now holds that place in the mind. Your steps carry you along a boulevard where people light candles and place flowers at a statue with a strong jaw and a coat that looks warm even in summer. A new constitution took root here after a winter of voices in the square, and power learned to bow to ballots and to the slow work of councils. The memory of a one-party season still sleeps in brick that looks stern in morning light. Offices now open to many talkers and close when the bell says the day has finished. The city keeps pace with a world that never stops moving and still finds time to pour tea. A train pulls in from the north with cars that wear dust from pine and snow. Another rolls out toward deserts and towns where goats make a living on thorn and loss. You share a compartment with a student who carries a bag full of books and a soldier who carries a small gift for his mother. They say that the land can feel very large and very small on the same day. You see how this can be true when a text message arrives from a friend who rides far away, and you hear the same wind through his phone that you hear through your window. You climb a low ridge and look toward a valley that has kept a secret for 800 years. People point into the distance and speak in low tones about a grave that refuses to be mapped. They say a river was made to change its bed, and a forest planted where there was none. You stand still and allow the air to move around you. You feel that some stories want to sleep, and that sleep is an honor that can be kept. You turn away and leave no mark. A banner of blue ribbons flutters on a cairn where truckers and herders and office workers stop and circle 3 times. Coins and small bottles glint among stones. You tie your ribbon and remember the rule that traveled this land before any wall learned to grow. Feed the traveler. Protect the weak. Let the animals drink first. Keep your word even when wind tells you to forget. The cairn keeps quiet. Watch over a road that asks for patience and gives company. One clear fact steadies the hour. In 1911, the old empire to the south loosens its hold and a bog Connaught raises its flag. Then in 1921, a new revolution rides in from the steppe, and the state that follows calls itself a People's Republic, until a winter of crowds in 1990 opens the way to a new parliament and a new constitution. One sign keeps its glow: the Soyombo that now centers a flag over a capital where temple and office share the same sky, and where Nadam drums still call a people to games older than any border. One open thread keeps its mystery. The place where the first great Khan came to rest lies somewhere that the land will not confess, and the song that best remembers him may be the long note that still rises from the horsehead fiddle when night grows kind. You return to Ajir, where felt holds heat and the stove purrs. Milk tea finds your hands. The old rule that home must open to a guest opens for you, and a place at the table appears where none had been a moment before. The story in your chest slows to the pace of breath. Outside, frost paints the saddle with silver. Inside, the lamp turns the ceiling into a small warm sky. You lie down on a mattress that smells of wool and sun and listen for hooves in the distance. You hear only your own heart and the song that keeps time for it. Night folds over the steppe and over roofs that keep a quiet orange light. Far roads forget their dust and the lines of old maps soften into the same gentle dark. Wind brushes grass with a hand that does not rush. A kettle hums on a low flame and finds a rhythm that invites your shoulders to sink. Beyond the door, a ribbon of blue cloth lifts and rests, as if the sky itself were breathing more slowly. Wagons that once rolled with noise now dream under frost that will turn bright at dawn. Saddles lean against poles and remember warmth from long hands. In a courtyard, the bell is covered with a cloth so that its voice sleeps. A garden where onions grew, and where a child once watered a single apricot, now holds only the calm scent of soil that has done its work. Hoofprints fade where the path meets the road. A wooden bowl waits on a shelf for morning milk. The horsehead fiddle lies quiet, its carved face turned toward the stove as if it watched embers settle into a red lake. In the square, a flag loosens and gathers, then loosens again, and each small motion seems to slow the clocks of the whole city. You feel the hush move in like a tide. Breath becomes softer, longer, kinder to the body that carried you. Names and dates drift back to the shelves where they belong. The story leaves its armor at the door and wraps itself in thicker cloth. A forgotten garden of willow and mint opens somewhere in memory, and footsteps there make no sound. A hand that could tighten a bridle now folds a blanket and tucks it close. Stars arrange themselves above a land that does not hurry. Your eyes grow heavy, and warmth gathers along the ribs like a slow blanket unfolding. And now, you may drift into dreams of history. End of script. Sweet dreams.